None at all.
What's the weather down there?
Pouring today.
Pouring? Oh, okay. It's cold and dreary up here. It's going to rain tonight. Hi, Eugene.
Is there an echo now?
No, it wasn't yours. It was Dan Robbins.
Oh,
So you're fine.
well, now I'm on Kim's. You want your phone back, Kim? All right. I'm going back to my phone. When will live meetings resume with Quaker City?
What did you say, Dan?
When will live meetings begin with Quaker City?
Ask what's his Arthur was the one they asked that question for.
Yeah. I'll talk later about okay. Since we're waiting for 7 o'clock, I'll give you a rundown of what kind of meetings I'm going to have. In September, I want to get a live meeting. I'm going to try to get it at Lulu, and I'm going to be the speaker. It's going to be about market surveys and market intelligence. And in October, we're going to have a lady, an insurance broker, who's going to be talking about Medicare, and she's pretty smart. In November, I'm trying to get a hold of the hospital. I want to try to get a doctor. A doctor. What? I want to get hold of the doctor. Who's that? I don't know who's that. I don't know who. Anyway, and in December I want to try to get. I want to get a hospital. Yeah, hospital. Yeah, I'll take dinners together. Did you go through? Well, we'll do the best we can. Worst comes to worst, we'll hear.
Dan, you gotta put yourself on mute. Because there's an echo.
There's an echo. Go.
Danielle?
You're on the mute. Dan, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Wait a couple more minutes. Well, anybody, are we going to, should I start or just wait? Should I start or just wait?
I mean, do you want to give everyone a couple minutes if they're running a little bit behind? It's your call, Arthur. You're president. You're president.
Okay.
Art's coming on.
We're gonna start. I most of my documents at home. So
Am I the only one who hears an echo?
Yeah.
No, and I can't understand what anybody's saying.
I think it's Daniel. And he's not listening. Oh, there you go.
Mike, you get out, come back in. Hear you better?
Now I don't hear it.
Okay. All right. We're gonna start. And I want to thank everybody for coming out on this dreary, rainy day. And I'm going to ask for Fred to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Fred, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. Can you do the Pledge of Allegiance, Fred?
sure.
Okay.
Anybody got a flag? Michael, you got a flag?
I don't have one. I don't have one here.
It's
Right.
prayer before flag. Prayer before country.
I think Ben has a flag. Okay.
All right.
All right. There you go.
We're gonna do the prayer first or the flag?
You gotta
first?
do the prayer first if you're gonna have one.
Well,
We'll
I
do
think we
prayer?
say the
Okay.
prayer.
All right.
Pinky,
Yes.
Pinky, do the prayer, please.
Okay, Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings you have given us. We thank you for the children entrusted in our care. Bless the military, and to bless the food that we ate or we're about to receive. In this we ask in your holy name, amen. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
that's okay.
Well, we can't see you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
You must look.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sit.
We're gonna have Ben Litman,
Much
and
background noise.
I'm gonna turn it over to Ben right now. Also, we don't have anybody from the diving in here, so it's gonna be very difficult, unless they come on later. Are they at Ocean City now?
Some of them are in Ocean City now. Some of them are on their way.
Okay, that's fine.
Dave said he's going to try and make it and get on. I don't know when that'll be, but we'll see what happens.
Okay. All right. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ben and, talk about the Native Americans who are Masons.
Okay. All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen real quick so that you'll be
Good
able to
evening.
see my presentation. If you have any issues, please let me know. All right, first I want to thank you all for coming out digitally and virtually during these unprecedented remote times to hear this presentation. It means a lot. As you know, my name is Ben Litman. I'm a past master and I'm active in some different clubs and units at Lulu, and I'm on the appointed divan, and I'm a co-chair with Mike Felcher for the Festival of Trees. So this is actually my first presentation at Lulu, so I'm hoping that there'll be more to come. So to begin, this is about Native American Freemasonry, and what makes Native American Freemasonry so different is that there really is no clear answer, but there's a lot that leans one way or another, and you'll see that as this presentation goes along. So to begin with the table of contents, we're going to start with the Scottish Rite Consistory of Buffalo, New York, and about the Seneca Masonic Lodge. There will be observations of the 17th century Jesuit missionaries, the allegory of Red Hand, modifications of Native American cultures over the time of colonization, a contrarian perspective, and I'll give you my analysis at the end. So to begin, the Scottish Rite Consistory of Buffalo had 3 Masons around the turn of the century who were led by a guide to observe a Seneca Masonic Lodge. They meet during the new moon. So under the new moon, complete darkness, they're being led by a guide deep within the woods. And the Senecas are the most powerful tribe in the Confederation of the 6 Nations of the Iroquois. And as these 3 Masons are approaching and getting closer to this lodge, they're hearing ritualistic chanting. They're hearing wild sounds of the forest, elemental sounds echoing through this completely silent night in complete darkness as they approach. So you can just imagine having no idea where you're going, having complete trust in your guide, and being told you don't need to be afraid, and seeing nothing but just hearing everything. So then you also have to get a background on the Iroquois and the 4 basic beliefs of the Iroquois nation. Number 1, a belief in a supreme being or a great spirit, a higher power created the universe. Morality, all matter has a life force. Be kind to everything and stoically deport yourself. Immortality, world beyond the sky, happy hunting ground, an abode of the creator. Brotherhood, everything in existence is intertwined and everything required reverence. So these 4 beliefs are something that are not so alien to us today. A belief in a higher power, a supreme architect, morality, where everything has a life force, everything has some sort of essence to it. A heaven, a construct of a temple, and brotherhood, and that everything should be looked at with some sort of reverence, and that there is some sort of connection, and that everyone is all related in some way, somehow. And here's an outline of the Seneca Masonic Lodge. So if you start at the bottom of the image, where, if you can see my mouse, this is the door that these 3 Masons were led into. They have an outer room for visitors to check to make sure, do they belong there? Who are they? Why are they there? There's a lamp table sitting there where they had some sort of light to illuminate this room before you could get to an inner door. And what we would call the west and the north, you would have seating. And you would have a flute player, a song holder, and you would have feast kettles where there would be food and other things available, and the smells wafting through this room. You would also see here a table with burning incense sitting right as you walked in not the middle of the room, but in the west. And there would be a guard right there next to this table, very much like an altar. You'd have the membership enter from what we would call the north. So we'd have the south here, I'm sorry, everyone here in the south. We'd have the north empty, guards at the north, at the northeast, and that would be where the members would come in. You'd have a fireplace here with a screen protecting the fire from going outward, and seat of invoker as someone standing in the east. And I'm not sure there, I didn't find anything to say that this was an officer, but you can make your own conclusions over how this room was laid out. But it's very interesting to see that not only were there no rooms that would be very recognizable to us today in some ways, but that the basic outline here is something that we would recognize. And that, continuing with these observations, we have the 17th century Jesuit missionaries who arrived in Canada. And these Native Americans were not exposed to European ideas or biblical references. And they found observations of a complex social network where you would find different languages among different tribes and different peoples where they would meet, trade. You would find language being used in an abundance of different ways that we wouldn't necessarily think of it. Language being a secret or a possession, that only certain people are able to possess certain words or certain languages because of status or titles earned or work performed. And that they found this in their culture, that it was almost a part of it in some sort of economic sense to an extent, but that they found an abundance of fraternal organizations, societies, and associations, that you would find a lot more complexity within the social structure than just one group with a very foil almost perception that you saw in a lot of media. And that they found a hierarchical system of government and leadership, and that there was a system in place of who to go to for what. And that they found diversity in these groups, that some are elaborate wood carvers where they would make great sculptures and statues and other structures from stone and wood and clay and earth, and actually move the earth to create their society and their towns. But you'd also see nomadic tribes who, like the teepees, would pick up and go wherever the buffalo would go, and that they were meant to be quick to move and quick to set up and wherever they needed to be. You would see craftsmen in bone and stone, where they would actually carve and make tools from different things that they had. And that one of their points of pride, one of the most important things about them, was these perfectly balanced axes, where they could actually take them and spin them like a top because they were so balanced. They would spin, and they would be able to hold their own circle as they spun. And that you would see geometric designs in operant masons, where they would actually build complex structures and engrave complex designs. It wasn't just set up like a log cabin or set up a teepee or build an adobe home structure. They would get more complex with their buildings than these missionaries thought. And that this leads to an allegory of Red Hand, which is going to be very, very familiar to so many. Red Hand was a young chief. He was considered to be a great leader, very wise, very skillful in everything that he did. and that because of his skill, he was envied. He had enemies, and he had a conspiracy where assassins rushed in upon him at his village and killed him. They assassinated him and left him there. And that the ancient guardians of the mystic potents, which were all the animals of the forest, because Red Hand was known as being kind to all living things, every animal, every tree, every human being, to being kind and just. These ancient guardians rushed in, collected his body, and they took him to a secret clearing. And that as dawn appeared behind the mountains and the thunderous roar of the waterfall cascaded behind them, he was raised from the dead by these ancient guardians and imparted with the mystical knowledge that is only spoken in select proven company. And that when they gave him this life, they used the healing power of maize, and they presented him with a white flint knife, so that he was actually brought in to this very, very mystical group because of his honor. And then you can actually see here the Animals Council raising him from the dead and giving him life in this artist's rendering. And you can see all sorts of different animals gathered around as he is laying in this clearing. And I just think that it's very interesting to see different interpretations of leadership. And that even though you may not have heard of this idea of an ancient council of the mystic potents and these animals, you can understand this symbolic connection of nature and all things working together. And that these are certain things that just bleed into everything in our society that we're very much aware of and comfortable with and can understand. And that this is what leads into the modification of Native American cultures. Because we don't know how much of this influence is from white European settlement. We don't know how much has happened because of settlements and colonization, that their stories and their histories and their traditions have been mixed and cut and added to with all these different settlers and colonies around them. And that even a Genesis-like origin story of good-minded and bad-minded. Some compare it to like two wolves, where you feed a good wolf or a bad wolf. And whichever one you feed is the one that gets bigger and stronger. Whereas with good-minded and bad-minded, it's more Taoist, where it's like the yin and yang. Good and bad need each other. They are intertwined. This was raised from the waters of the Navajo, and that to have good, you must have bad, and they don't exist without the other. And there's a mixture of both together, but that still has a lot of different elements to it of blending. Where savages were what they were called, and a lot of different names, and that racism and ethnocentrism played a role in their culture and how things were shaped and how things had evolved. Where when we talk about, like in the last presentation at Quaker City with a Holocaust survivor, how much did the Holocaust change modern Jewish interpretation of the world and perspectives, and how things are approached in all aspects of society because of that time period? And Native Americans, you can see a very similar, to some extent, experience where, because of their history and other things that had happened, it has changed and shaped how these Native American societies view the world today. And that they've been relocated, the Trail of Tears, there's reservations that they've been moved to, that they're not on the lands that they originally were on, and that they're now in a completely different part of the country and in different groups than they were several hundred years ago. And we don't know how much this change and all these different things in society have affected these stories that have been passed down. And that part of this contrarian perspective is that language is heard and seen, and that some of these Native American groups used not just spoken word as language, but would use sign language and use symbols, because you couldn't communicate and have commerce with someone you didn't speak the language with, and that they were so diverse and there's so many different tribes that they would find multiple different ways to communicate. And that sometimes Masonic signs could overlap unknowingly with these different forms of communication, and that young Masons, and I mean that as in a newly made Master Mason, could get very excited and want to see Masonry and look for different things in all sorts of different places. And when you join something and you're very excited, you look for it. And that sometimes that could just be, like Sigmund Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And that sometimes these tools and symbols aren't always Masonic. They could just be a tool that looks like that. And we know that as from French trade guilds that have similar symbols to Freemasonry, but have no affiliation whatsoever. And that the Klickitat warrior initiation, which was observed by Judge McBride, has no affiliation really with Masonry, but he became a full standing member of this tribe and witnessed the ceremony and was able to convey a similarity to a Masonic ritual. And that even with Freemasonry, it doesn't actually have a language of origin. It's a combination. It combines Greek and Egyptian for "I am in the midst of heaven," and the sun, a child. It's light. It's very, very different than these two languages being formed together as far as these interpretations from each language. So that Freemasonry means sons of light. And that Professor Whitney of Yale in the early 20th century said, "A word is a combination of sounds, which by a series of historical reasons has come to be accepted and understood in a certain community as the sign of a certain idea. As long as they accept, it has existence." So even though Freemasonry is not of any singular language and has a very different meaning than these two languages, we accept Freemasonry as sons of light. We accept it as this is referring to a specific group of people, a specific umbrella of organizations, and that even this Egyptian ideas, these Middle Eastern ideas, carry on today with shrine and shriner symbolism, that this is still very prevalent, and that the roots of it come from a very specific idea of the power of words and the power of the meaning behind the words. And that Brother T.W. Randall, who was the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Idaho, he first heard about Native American Freemasonry as a rumor as early as 1862. But Brother Randall could not find a single reliable source to say this occurred, that Native American Freemasonry exists. He couldn't confirm that there was a Native American Masonic Lodge. He had no Masonic records to verify Native American Freemasonry was practiced. He could not even find a single Native American Freemason. However, at the very beginning of this presentation, we saw a Seneca Masonic Lodge. We were able to have a story passed down to us of Scottish Rite Masons from the Buffalo Consistory in New York go and visit a Seneca Masonic Lodge. But that's the Northeast versus the Northwest, and in the Northwest, it didn't exist. And that's part of the problem, is that Native American tribes are not a monolith. There's not one tribe. There are too many, and you can't draw a universal conclusion. And that all these different parallels to something familiar could that have an impact from white European and early American colonization, where these different cultures had an imprint and an influence on these Native American tribes, and that certain mixtures of ideas occurred, and that this was brought into it? And that Freemasonry was not unified and publicly known until 1717. So did this occur prior to that? Or when it did occur in 1717, did these Native Americans become duly constituted Masons? Were they made Masons clandestinely, like Prince Hall Masons from Irish Military Lodge, and different people who were making Masons outside of a Masonic Lodge? Or were they non-Masons who practiced something that was just very similar and familiar to what we would see as Masons today? And for that, we're very curious to know if geography played a role in the determination of the exposure to Freemasonry. Where do we know if Freemasonry was exposed to these people because of where they lived? That the Northeast, we know, is more populated, and that we know that the Northeast has a stronger Masonic affiliation because of the size of the Grand Lodges than somewhere in the Northwest, like in Idaho, where it was a very sparsely populated and very frontier-like area. And that casual racism and ethnocentrism played a role in how the records were written, kept, and observed, and what they actually contain. So we don't know if there was something that was, because of the time, that was involving what was done to actually make that, pardon me, sorry about that, clearing that off, that we don't know if that these observations were taken from a place that would not be considered a bipartisan or a unbiased position, given different things that we know about those times. And that modern Freemasonry has a different role today than it did in other times. In some ways, it is about preservation of history, where the Buffalo Consistory has artifacts that were given to them from Native American Freemasonry. The Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania has a very strong professional, very pristine in some ways, beautiful collection of books, and its library is one of the great sources of pride for Pennsylvania. And that if you can actually go there and you can see the stacks, the amount of books that have been kept there are astounding. And that the Academy of Masonic Knowledge offers a lot of different opportunities for scholarly Masonic research and scholarly Masonic study, and listening to people present on Masonic topics that are both historical and symbolic. And they've been doing in-person and remote for several years now. And that it's not just the charity part, which the Shrine prides itself on so much, but also the history that the Shrines preserve, as far as the banners that they've carried in parades, the cars that they've driven, the fezzes, the jewels. The Shrine has a lot of its history preserved. And that part of it is passing down these ideas that, like the Shrine does today, it's important to take care of children who are sick, and it's important to do things that are social and that promote positivity in the world. And that's the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you've gathered from this presentation.
Good job. Good job.
Let's see. I'm trying to. Pardon me, I'm trying to see if I can unshare. There we go.
So a question, going back to when we, the first lodge in America was accepted by the Grand Lodge of England, is there anything in there that that identified anything unique in our lodge that was associated with our environment, maybe the Indian environment or anything like that? I mean, we have a unique experience compared to England, and so is any of that uniqueness demonstrated, let's say, related to the Indians?
For Pennsylvania, I didn't see much. And also Pennsylvania was settled so much earlier than other parts of the original 13 colonies, especially this part of Pennsylvania, that with New York, it was so far to the western part of New York that, and it was cold and very hard to live there, that there was a lot that may have existed, but I haven't seen a lot of records to say definitively it occurred here, and that we can see that there was a Native American lodge here, or Native Americans visited lodges here.
All right.
And when the animals took that one Indian chief and they resurrected him, they had a view of animals that they were spiritual, but they hunted them only for food. They did not hunt them for recreational sport. Is that possible that they, of what you had read, is that possible that alluded to that?
So yeah, there wasn't a lot of waste. They used the tools available to them. So you would see more woodworking in this area because it's Penn's Woods. There's plenty of wood available. So that would have been a more common medium for them to use. And making a Native American flute like the Lenape, who are known in a lot of different textbooks as the Delaware, they would use a lot of wood for their different tools and different structures for whatever they needed. That would be their first medium of choice. Same thing with an animal, they would use whatever they had. There wasn't a lot of waste, and there was a profound, not necessarily a reverence for like nature and everything, but that there is that belief, like the nation of the Iroquois, which are very strong in the roots of the communities in this area, that everything's interconnected. You are supposed to show reverence to everything, so that if you're going to have to hunt for food, you should be grateful that it was there. And since that animal has now died, you want to use it appropriately. You don't want it to be something that you just toss aside and waste.
Oh.
I have one other question. Is there any chiefs of the Indians that were famous Masons?
Not that I'm aware of chiefs that were famous chiefs. There were some who were known as far as maybe in their communities, but they also kept themselves very separate. And if it wasn't for Seneca and this group really opening their doors to settlers to an extent, we would never have known it existed. That the fact that we have at least one source that we can point to is remarkable, that a lot of these were very much geographic. So while we may know that this happened here, we're not going to find that in the West. We're not going to find that in like Oklahoma. We're going to find this in only a specific area where there's probably a lot of communication between the two different groups, and that there was some sort of peace and harmony where they could actually have an exchange of ideas more amicably.
Is there any history about the New York Indians and the Blue Lodges in that general area of Buffalo?
There was in that this group actually, they went back and forth. They actually had multiple different communications where they were in exchange with each other. So for this Western New York section, the Valley of Buffalo really was involved with this group of the Seneca, and that there was an exchange there. So while it may not have been all of New York, we can at least see that this group had a connection, and that there was some overlap there. I also saw that Crazy Bull's grandson, he was the grandson of Sitting Bull. He was a Mason, so there was some overlap as far as like some you would see, but it was very limited, because you also have to contend with this cultural divide, and someone has to open their themselves up to it, and someone has to open the portals to someone to come in. So to at least see some involvement is still remarkable in and of itself.
Very much so, yeah. That's fascinating.
Any other questions? Well, I thank you, Ben, for your perspective on the Native Indians and how they align with the Masonic values. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to our illustrious potentate, Dave Gingrich. Thank you for coming in, and it's all yours, Ben.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Coming through? Okay. Thank you. It's a very interesting presentation. I didn't make many comments because I don't have the history, but the fraternal movement in the United States, meaning college fraternities, the Order of the Arrow, which is a Boy Scout fraternity, it's a very interesting connection. Anyway, but let me just report on where we are. I try to use my couple minutes to go over where we are. Now we're, now we're into June, and COVID appears to, the COVID pandemic appears to be behind us. We've been in quarantine for 14 months. We now, if we choose to, if you got your 2 shots, you can go into some facilities. You can't go into medical facilities. I was in one today, and the CDC rules still apply in medical facilities. But the point is, the positive tests and the fatalities have gone down significantly, which is understandable, since most of the deaths were in the senior population, meaning late 60s, early 70s. So that's behind us. In light of that, we're starting to have live activities again. We had last night, we had Bucks, Tuesday night, we had Bucks County, which was the first time they'd been live in 14 months. That was at Ersterberger's, which is in Warminster. That was their first live meeting since March of 2020. So in addition to that, as many of you know, a large group is on the way to Ocean City. Some are there already. So Ocean City, New Jersey, is a traditional trip that's been sponsored by Northeast Shrine Club and the Arab Patrol in the past, and Northeast Shrine Club took the lead, and that will officially start tomorrow. There will be a parade on the boardwalk in Ocean City. This is a small parade, so if you think it's going to be like the Thanksgiving Day parade or New Year's Day parade, it's not. It's a local parade that we're going to have many of our vehicles on display, which you have in the past. Those of you who've seen this, the clowns are coming out in force, and that will be the first live weekend we've had in 2 years. So going into later in June, starting next Friday night, the activities committee is going to have their second event with Mike Felser and Doug Fink have put together a program. The Three Stooges. We are going to have the seven new nobles who submitted applications. I'm planning to have them sworn in earlier that night, which means they would be Shriners, but they would have to take a ceremony. They have to promise that they will take a ceremony within the next 6 months, which to be determined. That's either going to be in late June or September. So that's June 11th, which is next Friday night. So in addition to that, we're going to have a business meeting, which we're just filing. That's now scheduled. We put out one date, the 23rd. We changed the date to June 30th today because Noble Harry Speth, as you well know, his wife succumbed to COVID, and he came very close to death in a hospital. They're an elderly couple in their 80s, and so they're going to have a ceremony for Mrs. Speth on the 23rd. So on the 30th, we're going to have a business meeting and an election because the Oriental Guide resigned in office. That's Sean Doherty resigned. He and his wife both have some medical issues they want to resolve. Our own Mike Felser is going to run for Oriental Guide on that night, the June 30th. That is required. If a vacancy occurs in the first 6 months of the year, you have to have an election. So we're having an election on June 30th. If in the second 6 months, can appoint. And I also will be appointing Ben Litman would move up to first ceremonial master. He is the second ceremonial master now. So that's some important news. You're hearing that first. That's not put out in media yet. It will be next week. So that takes us to June 30th. Then on July 3rd, we're tentatively going to participate in the Rosemont, PA parade. And illustrious Sir Bill Adamson, who's our recorder, is going to put some leadership to that. He has been a colonel of the units in the past. So that will be the first, tentatively be the first parade we've participated in since last year. Those parades, actually, we actually get reimbursed by the municipality putting them on. So that takes us into July. The biggest thing in July, actually going into August 1st, we're going to have our annual picnic, but this is going to be bigger than it's ever been before. Many of you know we've had the Grandmaster meet in January as a traditional event. Lulu is the host shrine in Eastern Pennsylvania. He goes to one in Western Pennsylvania. We haven't had that in the last 2 years. We tried to get the Grandmaster to participate in the picnic. He can't do that to date, so we've sent out a letter through the district deputies to invite all the Blue Lodges to participate. That's where we really need your help to get your Blue Lodge to participate, especially bring Masons who are not Shriners. So this is an extension of recruiting, just as the activities committee meeting next Friday night is. So you've heard me say this before. Shrines throughout the United States, we have a membership problem. We have an older population. The average age of our Lulu Shriner is 72 years old. I fit right in that zone. So does many of you on this. We're trying to get that down into the below 50 in the next couple of years. That's why I appointed Mike Felser as first ceremonial master and Ben Litman as second ceremonial master to start to recruit younger Masons and have activities that appeal to them, which may be different than a married older Shriner. They may have different, social needs. And so this event on June 11th will have It'll be that we're opening up the shrine. This is open to everybody, men and women, husbands and wives, children. This is a family event, so it's an open door. That's going to be in the 11th, but then we're going to really follow up with this picnic on August the 1st. So I think you get the point. We really need your help in recruiting your Blue Lodge to send a group. We're already getting in some reservations, so we can talk about it, but unless we actually go out there and ask these lodges individually to get involved, they're not going to participate at the level we would like. So those are some things coming up in the next 60 days. Coming into September, annually, we have the Middle Atlantic Shrine Association, known as MAZA. You've heard of MAZA, you may not know what it is. Some of you have gone to MAZA conventions before. We have them in the spring and the fall. Lulu has been very active in the fall MAZA, which is the weekend after Labor Day in Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach is a shore town like Ocean City, New Jersey, or Ocean City, Maryland, meaning after Labor Day, families go home and it starts to slow down. We are the only, I won't say the only game in town, but the major game in town at Fall MAZA. So we'd like you to consider going to that. Many of you are going to make it an annual event. We have a big parade with all 28 shrines in the Mid-Atlantic Shrine Association, MAZA, which goes from Southern Virginia to all the way upstate New York, Buffalo, up through the Canadian border. Those states, there are 28 shrines in there, and we all participate in a big parade. There's a lot of fellowship. You get to see, that Shrindom is much bigger than just Lulu. We have 7 shrines in Pennsylvania, including Lulu, and 28 in other states. So that's a lot of information I put out quickly. I will put out 2 more things because you've been aware of them. I sent out a letter asking to have a 50-50 raffle. It's been very successful. We asked every noble to buy 1 ticket, and if they could afford it, and 7 for 100. That's been very successful. Right now, it raised about $15,000. That money goes into building improvements, and somebody's going to win a lot of money. That's a 50-50 raffle this year. We will look in the future and having 3 prizes, but this year it's a 50-50 raffle. So someone is going to win at least $7,000. So we'd encourage you, if you haven't bought those tickets, to do that. And the last thing I'll mention, under the circumstances with the pandemic, some other issues, we haven't had a circus or a rodeo or haunted house event in the last 2 years. The circus and the rodeo are in litigation, where that's going to go. We're working on it, but the point is, the Festival of Trees and Lights is an event that illustrious Sir Roy North, who's no longer with us, was very instrumental in bringing that concept. Festival of Trees and Lights is a big festival going into the holidays, whether you're Christian or Jewish, is into the holidays. And our shrine in Maine, for example, nets about $100,000 a year. We don't expect to do anywhere near that, but we do expect to make it a reasonable fundraiser. We already got a sponsor, so the first 2 years we had it, we took small losses. We already got Kennedy Ford as a corporate sponsor, so we're off to a good start. And we're asking also the Masonic lodges to sponsor a tree. So that's something you'll hear more about. You saw it in the Fez the last time. We got the new Fez coming out for July. So those are some things coming up. I put out a lot of information. You have any questions about anything? Anybody have a question about anything? Okay. Well, with that, I'd like to, I believe there's at least one past potentate in the audience. It's illustrious Sir Doug Fink. Doug, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, sure. Hey, thank you for talking about the event, with the Three Stooges and the Hallmark. I would like to see a show of hands who's going. So All right, so anybody that's not written down, I could put you in there. Okay. All right, so everybody, Steve Rashkow, I gotta put you in there. All right, anybody that's interested, it's only $10, and it is a nice evening. A lot of food, pizza, hoagies, fried chicken. There's gonna be 3 things going on. The Sixers are gonna probably be in the playoffs, are in the playoffs. They'll be playing, and we're gonna have it in one room. The Hallmark in another, and the Three Stooges outside. So if you change your mind and want to go, just give me a call before that Friday.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I say one thing, not to interrupt you?
Yeah.
Everyone, let your Blue Lodges know so they can get out the word also, because when we just did the fellowship night, it was a couple weeks ago, we actually got a reinstatement to membership from it. So it's a perfect thing to do and have people come out to something. So.
Yes.
Are there any other past potentates in the audience? I only saw one on there. Anybody else past potentate there? Okay, I am representing the dive-in. The rest of the dive-in is either in Ocean City or on the way to Ocean City. I'm going to leave later tonight. So with that, I want to thank you and turn it back to President Art Binder.
Thank you, illustrious sir. Right now, we're going to be closing, and I would like, let's see. Hillary, would you like to do the closing prayer?
Yeah.
I'm not very good at this. I can do it in Hebrew normally, but no, actually, we would truly like to thank God for everything that He has given us to this point, this great fraternity that we have, and the shrine that we have, and we're very grateful for all that He has given us. And,
did you say Don or Doug?
I said God, G-O-D, G-O-D.
D-O-D.
D.
D-O-D.
Supreme Being.
All right. Anyway, best to all, and stay healthy and have a good trip home wherever you are.
It's good fun. Somewhere to be.
Somewhere
to be.
Well, thank everybody for coming out. We're going to get more information about the meetings coming up. Like I said, the next meeting will be in September. So have a good summer and stay healthy. Please stay healthy.
On the 11th.
Yes, on the 11th.
Goodbye. Okay.
No, it wasn't.
Was it?
It's nice. Great presentation.
It was excellent.
Great presentation.
Yeah, Ben did a good job.
Yeah, you did. And thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate it.
Oh, we appreciate it.
Very
That's
much
all.
so.
Glad to do it.
Yeah, some went into that. Oh my God.
I was actually thinking when I meant with the Taoist part about Bart, and he's got the Buddha head, even though it's not the same, they're not connected, but it's Bart always has his Eastern religious flair, and he's very, it always strikes me as you're very knowledgeable about the philosophies of the East.
There's only about 50 Buddhas in this house. You can blame that on my wife.
You look better this time than the last time we saw you.
Well, I feel a lot better this time than the last time you saw me. I'm going to have to leave because we have a lodge meeting in a few minutes.
Here's another figure from the East. That's Confucius.
Oh, Confucius.
Confucius. All right, I'm going to say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Another meeting. Bye-bye.
All right. All right, I'm gonna close it out.
Hey, Gene, it's nice seeing you. Oh, he doesn't see me.
It's-
No, Gene, you're muted. Hi, nice seeing you, Gene.
Well, it's nice seeing you guys. Nice seeing you especially.
Let's get together at some point, okay?
Like this
It's
is
been-
good.
it's
We'll
been
see you
ages.
next month. Oh,
Well,
See you on the 11th. You want to come the 11th to this?
I'm being installed as secretary of my synagogue.
Oh, Mazel Tov. Mazel Tov. That's going to be a lot.
It's going to be my third year.
That is torture. I'll tell you. You're lucky guy. Lucky guy.
Yeah, I love it. I tried to quit, but I got my arm so twisted that
What synagogue is it?
Melrose B'nai Israel Emmanuel, MBIEE.
Quite a combination there. That's very
Quite a
nice.
long
Very,
name.
congratulations.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's fun. Nice people.
Get together, we'll see you again. For sure, at the Festival of Trees.
Well, that would be nice.
Hopefully. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Sei gesund. Sei gesund.
Because, well, we'll see.
Have a good summer.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Am I good to close this out or? All right. All right. Have a good night.